Hi, I'm Mark. This is Mark's Tech Vlogs on YouTube, and today I'm going to bring you guys a review of the Switchbot K10 Pro Combo. Now, the K10 Pro Combo is, as the title suggests, a combination of devices. It is in fact a robot vacuum with a docking station, but then also a handheld stick vacuum that docks into that station as well. And I have to be honest, when Switchbot first announced this device a few months back, I really did not get it. The idea of having a handheld vacuum attached to a robot vacuum's dock just didn't make a lot of sense. And then Switchbot reached out and offered to send me one to review, and I said yes, as long as I can make an honest review, and now I get it. And in this video I'm going to share with you everything you need to know about this combo, the specifications, and what I think of it having used it for about a month. Now if we start off with price, this is going to cost you about £800. Now this is £300 more than a K10 Pro, which suggests the kind of value Switchbot are placing on the actual handheld vacuum part. However, at the time of recording it's down to £650 with a code, and that means realistically you're never going to pay more than that, because deals do get even better than that with Switchbot. The trick, as I always say with buying Switchbot products, is to check both Amazon and Switchbot's website, because both always have different deals going on. I'll put links to both below so you can find the best price. So let's move on and talk about everything you get with this robot vacuum combination. So this comes with the robot vacuum itself, the docking station, spare bags, the handheld vacuum and its accessories, instructions, a spare side brush, a spare filter for the stick vacuum, and some cleaning brushes. Basically, you get everything you'll need for about 9 months of usage from this. That means occasionally you will need to buy some spare bags and also some spare filters and brushes. These aren't hugely expensive and are available via the Switchbot website. I will put links to those below as well. So let's talk about the design a little bit more. And there's 3 parts to talk about here. So firstly, the K10 Pro Robot Vacuum is one of the smallest robot vacuums on the market, and it's got a nice white rounded design with some black sensors on it, and it looks pretty neat. That size also allows it to get into small spaces, including getting under things as well. Next we have the dock, and this has a nice white slim design and is really compact. The top lifts up for you to easily change the bag when you need to. Then there's the stick vacuum, and this also docks into the docking station. This is a very slim, lightweight handheld vacuum, and it blends in really nicely with that dock. This whole design is really well thought out and surprisingly compact considering all you get with it. And this leads us nicely to talk about specification. So the robot vacuum can be as quiet as 45 decibels if you have it on its lowest setting. It supports cleaning carpets as well as hard floors and has carpet detection built in. This means when it detects a carpet, it will go onto maximum suction mode. It has a rubber anti-tangle brush, which is the same that you'd find on the K10 Pro, but also the Switchbot S10. Having used these on various vacuums for a while now, these anti-tangle brushes do work really well. In terms of suction power, the robot has a 3000 PA suction power. This isn't as much as some robot vacuums, but it's still pretty good and does its job well. It's also Matter compatible if you use it with a Switchbot hub. That means you can expose it to Apple Home and have an on-off switch, and then it also works with things like Siri shortcuts, Alexa and Google Home. Now in terms of the Apple Home support just being an on-off switch, this is because at the time of recording, Apple Home still does not support robot vacuums. Now this is something Apple promised with iOS 18 and it hasn't yet been rolled out. When that changes, I'll let you know below. The vacuum has a DTOF radar built in. Alongside that, there's a PSD distance sensor. And both of these things help it map effectively, but also avoid bumping into things. It does tend to just glide around things like chair legs. This is much better than just crashing into things. If it does crash into something, that bumper retracts and it's pretty soft, so it doesn't seem to do any damage to things. One thing to note is that because of the size of this vacuum, it can only handle small thresholds. That means you're going to want to make sure your thresholds aren't too high when you pick up one of these. It also features a mop-in mode, where you basically attach a plastic attachment to the base and wrap a wet wipe around it. You do get some of these with the vacuum. And this is the only place I'm going to mention that mop-in mode, because much like the K10 Plus and the K10 Pro reviews, that's not a mop. If you want a vacuum cleaner that mops, this isn't for you. That is just attaching a wet wipe to your vacuum and run it around your floor. And then we should talk about that docking station. So this docking station is mains powered. That means you are going to need to find somewhere for it to plug in. The bag inside it should give you up to 70 days between needing to change it. And that bag has a 3 litre capacity. How often you'll need to change it will depend on how much dirt it picks up as time goes on. From experience with these and Switchbot devices, I tend to find they actually need changing even less than that. Now when the robot returns to its dock, or when you put the handheld vacuum back in the dock, it will automatically empty itself into that bag. And this leads nicely to talk about that handheld vacuum cleaner. Now this has a massive 20,000 PA suction power. Now Switchbot say this removes 99.7% of floor debris. They also say it can purify as well. Now I can't find anything to confirm this on the Switchbot website, but I think the green light you see when you use this vacuum is the thing that actually does the purification. If you know any more about that, let me know, and I might be completely wrong. To be honest though, with vacuums, it's the suction that matters, not really if it purifies. And this vacuum has two different suction modes that you can toggle on or off on the device itself. There's also an on-off button. Alongside that, you get a variety of attachments for this handheld vacuum. That includes a brush with a dust cap, a multi-brush bar, a mite removal brush, a 2-in-1 brush, and nozzle and flexible crevice nozzles. These are really easy to change, and they even have a little dock of their own that comes with the vacuum. This dock doesn't fit onto the main dock, and I've just placed mine on top. It would be nice if it fitted somewhere though. This vacuum also has a HEPA filter. Now when it comes to battery life, Switchbot say if it's on maximum mode it will last around 12 minutes. And then if you have it on minimum suction mode it will last up to 40. Now this isn't long at all, so it's certainly more geared towards smaller houses I think. I also think that's a trade-off for the small design and weight of its handheld vacuum. And I do think Switchbot have made the right decision here. I think having a lighter weight handheld vacuum is better than a heavier one with a bigger battery. It's also super flexible, which means it's easy to get under sideboards and sofas. So that's it for spec. Let's talk about setup. So setup is mostly spent assembling that handheld vacuum, which comes in a lot of different pieces. You then want to plug in the dock, attach the vacuum and the K10 Plus Pro to it, and then head into the Switchbot app. Here you'll hit the plus in the top, you'll find the vacuum and you'll follow the instructions on screen. If you do want to expose it to Matter, you can also do that by going into either your Switchbot Hub 2 or your Switchbot Hub Mini with Matter. You can then add it to the Matter devices there and it will automatically appear wherever you've got that hub set up. So for me, that's Apple Home. And then finally, you'll send the vacuum off on a quick map of your house. At that point, it's ready for you to set schedules and all sorts of things. So let's talk about using it. So the actual robot vacuum, the K10 Plus Pro, works largely the same as the standalone K10 Plus Pro. In fact, the only design change is that it doesn't dock magnetically, but it has holes in the vacuum and the dock has things that stick out that it goes into. I'm guessing this is so that when you put handheld vacuum on, you don't accidentally knock the vacuum off. Now, the way I've mostly been using this vacuum is via a schedule in the Switchbot app, and I've just got it set to go around the upstairs of my house a few times a week. When you set these schedules, you can choose the suction power, but also how many times it passes your floor area. So you can choose once round or twice round. And generally, in using this, I've found that it works well. And the whole of the upstairs of my house is low pile carpets. And the suction power does seem to be enough to work around these, and the little side brush does kind of stir up any debris that's kind of bedded in slightly. Anything that's really stuck in though, it is going to struggle with. Now my home office where I'm filming this video does have a slightly more awkward slope down into it. That means the vacuum does have to sort of look like it's getting stuck and wiggle its way out of it when it's going in and out, but it does manage it. The cliff sensor built in also means that it doesn't fall down the stairs. And the sensors built into a vacuum mean that it really does glide around. And that side brush helps it get into corners as well. If you want to, you can also set no-go areas on the map. For example, if you've got somewhere there's a few cables around it you don't want it to suck up. If it does get into trouble, it will let you know on the app and stop doing what it's doing. And the size of this vacuum means that it can get into some really small spaces. And then when it's finished its job, it will take itself back to the docking station and empty itself. And realistically, there's very little to fault with this vacuum. And actually, before using this, I'd used the K10 Plus Pro for many months with very little faults as well. It's a really good little vacuum. And then we should also talk about that cordless vacuum because that's also pretty good. It's nice and light to hold, it's got plenty of suction power, and I really like how flexible it is, especially for getting under things like sideboards. One thing I do find is that when you're using that main brush attachment, the light on it is a little bit off-putting, and if you're on floors that are slightly reflective, it does make it difficult to see all your vacuuming. Unfortunately, there's not a way to turn that off without using one of the other attachments instead. The other attachments are also really good, and switching them out is nice and easy. One of the things I do really like, especially compared to something like a Dyson handheld, is that the on-off button does in fact just keep it on or off. That means you can switch it on and you don't have to worry about keeping that pressed down. The only thing I'd say about the main brush attachment is that it could do with having a little bit more brush to kind of really scrape carpets when you need to get things up that are embedded in. But the standout feature of this handheld vacuum has got to be the self-emptying. And that's because when you've finished using it and you dock it back in, it empties itself back into that main dock. Now, in researching this video, I've discovered that there are some other vacuums out there that do this. This is, however, the first time I've come across this on a vacuum, and it really is game-changing. Especially as someone who is terrible at remembering to empty the vacuum. What I've found with things like Dyson handhelds is they just get clogged up and full and then they kick off about their filter. This just gets emptied every time after you've used it. And keeping all of this in one docking station is really clever and compact. But this leads us on to say, what are there any downsides? And having used this, I'd say there's three things to talk about here. Firstly, as I said, the battery life on that handheld vacuum isn't great on maximum power mode. Now, for the amount of time I use it, that's not a big deal, but if you think you are going to need to use it for more than 12 minutes with being fully on a charge, then you might want to think about that. If you need to check battery levels, you can do so in the Switchbot app, but personally, I just tend to use it when I need to. And for the most part, it's kind of a secondary thing to the robot vacuum, which does most of the hard work. The second thing is that the main brush attachment on that could do with being a bit more brushy, by which I mean if something gets embedded into your carpet, it's not great at kind of scraping it out. And then the third thing is the price point. Because even at the £650 price point, it's still a big outlay. And granted, if you remember you actually getting 2 vacuums for the price of 1 here, it's not massive, but it is still quite a lot to spend on a vacuum. But those are the downsides, so let's get towards the end of this video and talk about my verdict on the Switchbot K10 Pro Combo. And as I said at the start, when Switchbot announced this, I did not get it. However, having used it for a month now, I think it's actually a really good idea. Having everything dock in one place and having a handheld vacuum and a robot vacuum together is a really good idea, especially when they're both empty into the same place after use. And being able to easily grab that handheld vacuum when you need to is fantastic. And because it's docked to the same place as your robot vacuum, you know it's always going to be charged. And to talk about the robot vacuum itself, as per my K10 Pro review, the K10 Pro is a great little vacuum. It's got plenty of power and it does a great job. The only downside is also its strength, and that the trade-off for its little size is that it does struggle with bigger thresholds. If you've got any questions about this, do stick them below because I'm going to keep using this. If you do want to pick one up, I'll put links below as well to Amazon and Switchbot's website. There's also a discount code for Switchbot's website as well. Both of those links are affiliate links that will go to Amazon or Switchbot in whichever country you're in. That means if you use one of those links, I'll get a very small cut of what you spend at no cost to yourselves. This just helps this channel out because this isn't my full-time job, it's not a paid review, and I don't take sponsored videos because I always want to make sure I remain impartial. If you've enjoyed this video, give it a like, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you guys again soon.